Ryan and Gina moved to Aurora into a house of a friend, and that friend told Gina she needed to join our ladies' Bunko group, and I heard her talking to someone else about having a home Bible study. So I went to the first home Bible study, and meeting Ryan and getting to know a little bit about them, I was just really excited that I felt like God had brought me to Colorado to be here when they got to Colorado to go on this journey. I've been here ever since, and I'm really grateful that Ryan was able to put his life on hold to follow God's plan, and that's what we've done from beginning to end, and we've seen exponential growth from that.
What's up, Edge Church? How we doing today? Hey, rumor has it there's a little celebration going on here. Happy 5-year anniversary today. Yes. Fantastic. Well, I'm joined by my wife, Gina, if you haven't had a chance to meet her, and we wanted to just come and, you know, when you have an anniversary, you always have to reflect on kind of the past, how do we get here, and what happened, and all that. And so we wanted to just kind of share a little bit of that with you today. And, you know, Gina, it's been a fantastic journey, you know, hasn't it? I know that it hasn't been easy all the time. I know when we first moved here that a pastor told me, he said, Ryan, he was one of the pastors of one of the larger churches in town, and he said, hey, I don't want to discourage you, but I do want you to know that over the last 10 years, I've seen 50 church starts start and end here in the city. And I was like, well, you know, thank you for the encouragement. You know, I appreciate that. And he said, I just want you to know what reality is. And I said, well, I appreciate that. And then not too long after that, we learned that about 90 to 95% of the people in the Denver metro area don't attend a Christian church, which was interesting as well. We also had another pastor that told us he didn't think anybody would come to our church because
they were all going to his.
Yeah, that's right.
By the way, for joining us today.
Can I just say this? We're just family here today. Can I just say more people come to our church than that church? I mean, I'm just saying, you know.
It's his competitive
I don't know.
That he talked about last
week.
I
can't help it. It's just kind of funny sometimes. Where were we?
Well, I'll fill in here.
Okay, good.
one of the most thought-provoking, what word am I looking for? Epic memories or things that we reminisce about when we look back on this experience is here I was with a newborn. Bryn had just been born, our daughter. We had lived in our house for not more than, maybe 2 weeks, and didn't know one person, even in our neighborhood yet. And our pastor, one of the nice ones, called Ryan and said, Ryan, there's something I want to show you. And he brought Ryan to a church building and showed him around.
Yeah, and amazingly enough, this is like before the church has ever started, the building that this pastor brought me to was this building we're sitting in today. Can you believe that?
That's right.
Amen. It's crazy.
We kind of laughed about it then because this pastor said, Ryan, do you think you can raise the money to buy this place? And we laughed because we really did not know one person yet. We had not even started a
We had no Bible study. We had no members. We had no people. We had 2 members actually right here. My favorite scripture at that time was where 2 or more are gathered. That was Gina and I. We had 2 or more.
That's right.
And from that point on, it was just almost like, like God was foreshadowing the future of Edge Church in a crazy way. When he told me how much the sticker price was on this facility and the fact that it's 42,000 square feet, I about choked as a, church starter that had not, didn't have any people. But in an amazing way, it began to cast a vision in Gina and I's heart for what the future might become. And I believe that God has a plan that's greater for our lives than many times than we even believe ourselves.
Yes, it instilled within us a big dream and a big vision, and believing God that anything was possible. And so that's the spirit of faith that we began Edge Church. And we started a home Bible study. We had about 5 or 6 people there. That grew to about 20 to 25 people. We called that our launch team. We used that team of people then to have our grand opening and a couple of preview services at Coyote Hills
Elementary. So
Elementary school.
we
Yeah.
moved from the house over to the school, and we had over 200 people that actually came to our very first service, which we were thrilled by. It was a great beginning. And remember, we were so thankful just to have Coyote Hills. It wasn't really like that great of a school. It was kind of small, but all the other principals in town told us that they didn't want a church there, and so this was the one principal that let us meet there. So we were thankful. We were
Until
thankful
1
for it.
month before our grand opening.
Yeah, we were kind of sweating it out, kind of at the
did
end,
not
weren't
know
we?
We had a school to meet in, so we were very thankful. We had a destination. We had a place to call church for a little while, and I don't know if you remember how we built our team of people. We knew nobody, and so we looked on Craigslist for our musicians, our lighting and sound guys, and I can't say
You could
that I
meet some crazy
recommend
people on
that.
Craigslist. Anybody ever done that before? I'm telling you, some of the weirdest people on Craigslist. We had to find some musicians somewhere, so Gina was looking on Craigslist. My favorite musician was this dude named T-Bone. He was our guitar player. T-Bone. I don't think T-Bone had ever been to church his whole life. He looked like somebody out of the Grateful Dead. It was awesome. And T-Bone could shred the guitar.
It's church.
It was Edge Church, T-Bone on lead guitar. It was awesome. And I'm pretty sure that some of those people that we didn't know that came and played in our band were probably under the influence of a little special substance we have a lot of in Colorado. I'm not sure for sure, but I mean, maybe. It could have been.
possible.
It's possible.
That's where we started.
That's where we did start. And then after the elementary school, we moved over to the middle school, Liberty Middle
Oh,
School, which was
man, very
fantastic.
good time.
We were so excited because we actually had a real stage and real lights and stuff, and the kids actually got to meet in the classrooms rather than the hallways at the elementary school. And it was a fantastic beginning of the next stage. We were praying. I think our team spent about 3 months praying, God, give us a different building, a bigger building, because we had started filling up the elementary school. And one day I got this one-line email from the administration at the school district. It said, Ryan, are you ready for a bigger school? And I was like, that is insane, because I haven't told anybody at the school district that we need a bigger school. But I was like, yes, exclamation point. And she said, I'm going to take you over and introduce you to the principal of Liberty Middle School. And I didn't have the heart to tell her that same principal had told us no 2 years before. But I was like, if you're going to introduce me, I'll go. So we did, and they opened the doors for us, and we had 2 fantastic years at Liberty Middle School.
We did. So we grew to 2 services and about 250 people at the elementary school. But at the middle school, we were able to expand to 3 services, and with about 400 to 450 people in attendance every week. And God blessed us there. It was a great place of growth, a great season for us. And then Ryan began to cast the vision for our REACH project. And before we even had a building, we began that project to raise the funds for that. Great act of faith. And then shortly after that, we learned that this building was available, and that brought us to where we are
To
today.
here. And we'll celebrate 1 year here at this facility the first weekend of November. So we're excited. We're looking forward to that as well.
Yes.
But Gina, also the other thought that I had was all the creative places we had offices.
Well,
Yeah.
the criteria was simple. It had to have free Wi-Fi and free refills or coffee and food. And
Yeah.
so Starbucks, Super Target, I think Ryan's favorite was Chick-fil-A.
I love Chick-fil-A because they did have free refills there.
Yes.
And one time I got to know one of the managers, and he looked at me, knowing that I would come every single morning. I was there all the time. I was like a regular, and he looked at me. He goes, what do you do? Like, who are you? Kind of thing. This weird guy's watching all the little kids on the playground. Who is this guy? Kind of
I
thing.
want you to know, though, Ryan led that man to Christ, and he was baptized in our church.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. One of our favorite also was our basement. And in the very, very beginning, we would office in our basement. And poor Jeff, he was our first staff member, and he would office on our air hockey table that we got for a steal of $10 at a garage sale.
That was a heck of a
I know
desk,
he loved
I'm telling you. Awesome. Awesome.
So we've come a long way.
We have come a long way. And you know, the Edge Church has just been a journey of faith. I mean, just starting in our living room with 5 people, moving to where we are today. It's just been an amazing journey of faith, and I want to share a little bit more about that in just a moment. But let me just say this. I'm really convinced that I have the best pastor's wife in the world, and I realize that I'm probably a little biased, but my wife, Gina, is like an amazing leader. She is just a fantastic spouse, support to me. She's a confidant. She's a prayer warrior. She ministers to people. She loves people. If you know Gina, you know that she's all about Edge Church and all about ministry. And I think we just need to give it up for her this morning, just to say thank you today.
Thank you, babe.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, babe. Yeah. Well, I want us to open our Bibles this morning to the 12th chapter of the book of Genesis. Today I want to talk to you about living a life of faith. God wants every person to be a person of faith. And I believe the greatest example of this is found in the character, the person of Abraham. Abraham's life was formerly known as Abram. I will probably call him both. But Abram in Genesis chapter 12 is considered to be the father of faith. He's the preeminent character of the Bible other than Jesus Christ. He's mentioned more than 300 times. And every time the name Abram is mentioned, or Abraham, it's always in conjunction with faith. There's just something about this guy. He was a man of great faith. We can learn from his example because in Genesis chapter 12, God leads him to go to a place, to a land he has never been before. God actually uproots him and directs him to an unknown destination later to be revealed as the land of Canaan, but not to be known at the present time. And Abram has a remarkable life of faith. All the way through his entire life, we see faith, believing God, trusting God. I don't know what situation that you're in today, but you know, living by faith is something that never gets old. Maybe you've gotten a diagnosis from the doctor. And man, you're being challenged to live by faith. Or maybe you're starting a new career, a new company, and you're being challenged to live by faith. Or maybe there's some new chapter in your life, some new challenges or some new opportunities, and God is stretching you, and you need to live a life of faith. Well, let's look at the life of Abram from Genesis chapter 12, because there's 3 things today I want us to see. And the first is simply this: faith is always moving me. Faith is always moving me. You know, God is a moving God. You cannot follow God while you're standing still. God is always moving. I mean, God is always directing and redirecting, and you're over here one moment, and then God's leading you over here another moment. You cannot follow the Lord and stand still. You can't do it. When you follow the Lord, you are running and sprinting and hopping. You're moving. You've got to move to follow God. And this is the very first word out of the mouth of God to Abram in Genesis 12. Look at this. The Lord said to Abram, say it with me, go, right? Go. Go from your country, your people, your father's household to the land that I will show you. He says, get up and go. You got to move, Abram. You got to move. I got new plans for you. I got new places for you. I'm going to take you to some places you didn't even know were possible, but you've got to go. God is a moving God. He's a moving God. And you know, this is a big deal in the life of Abram, because Abram was not the most likely candidate to be moving 800 to 1,000 miles away to the land of Canaan. We know it today as the Holy Lands. Abram didn't know that when God spoke to him. But Abram is actually 75 years old. Can you believe that? 75 years old. And he's an old dude, but I know some of you guys are 75 and you're like, man, but I feel young. Let me set this in context. The average age of a person in the Bronze Age was about 33 years old. This is the time of Abram. So he's more than twice the average age of a person. It would be kind of like saying this: if the average age is 75 in America, it would be like being 150. Now, could you imagine if God said to you at age 150, I need you to move across country. I'm not going to show you where you're going to go. You're never going to see your family again. I'm not going to tell you where you're headed. But I need you to get your stuff together, and I just need you to move. I mean, most of the time, when people get to be a certain age, like Abram, they're thinking about maybe being a greeter at Walmart, eating their Metamucil, driving across country in an RV or something like that, hanging with the grandkids. No, not our man here, Abram. And he's starting over. He's starting over. Some of us in this room are starting over. You're starting over. You thought your marriage was going to last forever, and you find yourself today, you're starting over. Or you thought your career was going to last forever, and now you're doing something, you're not even sure what you're doing, but you're starting over. You're starting over. Maybe some of us have moved to a new city. You're starting over. And sometimes starting over can be so scary and difficult, but listen, what a great opportunity for faith. What a great opportunity to believe God, to trust God. And Abram, furthermore, in addition to being this dude that's 75 years old, he doesn't even know where he's headed. I mean, that's one thing to start moving and to know where you're going, but when you don't even know where you're going, God just says, I will show you. It's pretty challenging, isn't it? I love Genesis 12, 4 and 7. Gives us some more commentary. It says this: so Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he went out to Haran, and he took his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot and all the possessions they had accumulated and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. And so there's no delay. God says, Abram, go, in verse 1, and verse 4, man, he's moving. Sometimes in the Christian life, we want to pray about things that God has already spoken about. Listen, there's some things you don't even have to pray about it. God's already said it. God's given us his word. God has given us the power of his Holy Spirit. There's just some things God's waiting on us. I wonder how many of us today, God is simply waiting on you to hear the call and to go. And, we don't know, why did God want him to move to a new place? We don't really know. But you know what? When you move to a new place, when you start over, when you get stretched in faith, you will learn dependence on God at a whole new level. Amen. You will. You just start depending on God because you don't know what else to do. It kind of reminds me when we moved to this city. And Gina and I are originally from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We moved to Colorado. We've been skiing here before. We didn't know anybody. And I got here, and I had one of those moments. It was like, what have I just done? Anybody ever felt that way before? What have I just done? And I was like, man, this is going to be hard. I had heard some encouragement. Like 50 church plants had crashed and burned, in the last 10 years. And, I'm telling you, I started to pray. I started to pray my guts. I've never prayed that hard before. Are you kidding me? In fact, I decided I was going to pray for 100 hours, and I did. And I finished about midnight the night before our first service. And I mentioned this a few months ago, somebody thought that I prayed for 100 hours straight. And I was like, I am so honored that you think that your pastor is that spiritual, that I could just pray. I don't go to the bathroom. I don't eat. I don't talk to my kids. I just pray all the time. But it was over a few months, okay? It was several months. I prayed 100 hours. But you know what? At the end of that 100 hours, I felt like I knew what God wanted us to do as a church. Sometimes we wonder, why is God not speaking to me? But could it be that the television is on and the internet is on and the phone is ringing? Sometimes we have to pull away from all this other stuff so we can just get alone with God to hear what God has to say to us, not just all this other stuff that's going on. And if you're feeling desperate today, you need God. You need the Lord in your life. You need to get alone with him. Get away from everybody. Turn everything off. Go seclude yourself somewhere and get with God. And Abram heard the call of God, and he starts to move. And, you may be thinking, well, I can't have faith like Abram. Abram's like one of those Bible, rock star men of faith and all this stuff. I can't be like Abram. Let me tell you something. Abram was from a non-believing family. Nobody in Abram's church worship, or in his family worshiped the Lord. They worshiped the moon god, Urim, the god of the Mesopotamians. Abram was kind of like the weirdo in his family. He was like the one that was following the one true God. And I don't even know that Abram really knew God that well. I mean, really, because his life kind of picks up there at the end of chapter 11, beginning of chapter 12. Many of us probably know a lot more about God than Abram did at this phase. But what is so beautiful about his life is he began to take this step the moment that God began to direct his heart. Isn't that great? God is a moving God. And my prayer for Edge Church is that we would be a church that's a moving church. Amen. Listen, churches that stay the same will inevitably die. Amen. We don't want to be the church that won't move and won't change and won't do anything different. And we want to just sit in the same chair in the same row, and I want to park in the same place in the parking lot, and I want to go to service at the same time, and I want to sit by the same old people, and I don't want to do. Listen, if that's the mark of our life and our church, the church will die. God is a moving God. God is a moving God. And we serve a moving God, so we're always moving. Adding services, reaching people, expanding our ministries. That's a good thing. We should be excited about that. We should be thrilled about new opportunities. What can we do to share more of this life-changing message of Jesus Christ? We can't get any better than that. Now, you know, I love to focus on what I know when I live by faith, not what I don't know. Because when I focus on what I don't know, I worry and I stress. You know, well, where are we going to meet? Where are we going to go? Who's going to be there? What's the plan? What time? Where's the money going to come from? Maybe those are some questions you've had in your mind before. When I'm thinking about what I don't know, I worry. When I think about what I do know, I believe God. What I do know is God loves me. I also know God is directing me. I also know that God is for me. And if God's for me, then who can be against me? And see, when I begin to meditate and to think about what I do know, then I begin to believe God and to move in faith rather than getting over here in the land of worry. Oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And I believe this is how Abram just began to pack his stuff up and get his family together and to move, because he knew that God had spoken. And if God had spoken, that was enough. You know, where are we going to live? Well, I'm not certain. But you know what? I know God's going to show us. And when I need to know, God will let me know. And so until then, let's just move in faith. Let's just move in faith. Let's do it. You see, faith is always moving me, but it is also challenging me as well. Faith is a challenge. Listen, you're going to serve God. You're going to live a life of faith. You're going to be challenged. It's not easy to live by faith. In fact, you will be different from most of the people in our culture. Most people don't want to live by faith. It is challenging. Look at this in verse 1 again. The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land that I will show you." And I love the commentary of Hebrews chapter 11, the New Testament. It says this about Abram: "It was by faith that Abram obeyed when God called him to leave his home and to go to another land, that God would give him his inheritance. And he went without knowing where he was going. And even when he reached the land of God that God had promised him, and he lived there by faith, for he was like a foreigner living in tents. And so did Isaac and Jacob, who inherited the same promise." Man, I'm telling you, Abram was stretched, living in a tent, in a culture. How many of us have been to a foreign country before? You've been to another country. Cancun, Mexico does not count, okay? This was not Cancun. Everybody's speaking the English, right? No. Abram is going to a long, long way. Our city is one of the most diverse cities in America. But listen, I don't think the land of Canaan was a place of diversity. I mean, if you were a Mesopotamian living in the land of the Canaanites, you were a weirdo. You know, you were different. You spoke a different language. You had different tribes. You had different customs. Obviously, Abram had a different faith. Everything about him is different. He's moving from the place where he fits in, where he knows people, where there is a routine, and now he's moving to a place that he has nothing. You see, we have to abandon our routine. You notice it says there, go from your country in Genesis 12:1. And our country is where we feel comfortable, right? We all have routines. You know, we have the places we like to buy groceries, the place that our kids go to school, the friends in our neighborhood. You know, we feel comforted by that. We're comfortable. That's a normal thing. We like those things. God said, leave all that. I'm not asking you to move down the street. I'm asking you to go to another country. You know, I'm asking you to go a long, long ways away. Abandon that. Abram's like, God, sign me up. You see, you can't get to where you're going until you leave where you are. And God says, go. God says, go. Now, this place, is the land of Abram. It's where his birthplace is. It's the part of the world that we know as Iraq today. And nobody here is like thinking, man, I would love to live in Iraq. That would be a great place to live. But listen, in the ancient world, there in between the Tigris and the Euphrates River, was the greatest place on the planet to live. Archaeologists have discovered during the time of Abram that this was the wealthiest place on the planet. The economy was amazing. There were jobs everywhere. They have unearthed houses of 13 and 14 rooms, 2-story villas that were the norm. They had plaster on the walls, which is something that was normally just for kings and queens. This was normal stuff. And plaster on the wall was great because it helped modify the climate in the room. A lot of people lived in mud huts, for crying out loud, okay? This is thousands of years ago. Abram lived in an amazing place. Now, I can't think of a worse name than I mean, that just sounds dumb, does it not? Where do you live? You know, it sounds like someplace in Arkansas, doesn't it? You know? I'm picking on my Arkansas people here today. I love you guys. You guys had a tough day yesterday, but I still love you guys. Where are you from? You know, just doesn't sound that good. But it was a beautiful place. It was an amazing place. Right there in the Fertile Crescent, in between the two great rivers. And it was a fantastic place to live. And God said, I want you to leave this house, this nice dwelling, and I need you to live in a tent, Hebrews tells us. You know? You had climate-controlled environments. You had, you had beautiful streets and a beautiful market. Now I want you to go live in the middle of a desert. And so we have to abandon routines to follow the Lord. Here's a question today, church. Are you willing to let God disrupt your life? Sometimes we think God is to fit around us. God says, no, you fit around me. By the way, when you live that way, God will bless you. God will bless you. Look at this. He had to abandon relationships. Your father's household, it says in Genesis 12:1. There's loneliness that's there. I imagine that Sarai and Abram spent some holidays alone. You know, they left their friends and they left their family. And sometimes when you follow the Lord, there's relationships that have to end. Did you know that? Sometimes there's friendships that have to end. Sometimes there's other relationships that have to die. It's hurtful. It's hard sometimes. We have to abandon relationships. By the way, when we moved to Colorado, we had some family members that were very worried about us. You know, they were like, "Are you guys okay?" You know, I mean, everything all right? You know, did you guys get this right? I sure hope God spoke to you. You know, nobody really said that, but certainly there was a little uneasiness there. And sometimes you got to follow God, and people don't understand it. You know, you got to abandon relationships. Other times you got to abandon reason. Look at this again in chapter 12, verse 1. To the land I will show you. Where are you going? I don't know. It's going to be great, though. God's there. God's directing us. Sometimes reason is the greatest reason why we don't live by faith. You know, it's got to make sense. It's got to fit into a box. It's got to fit into an equation. It's got to make sense to me and everybody else. Sometimes when you follow God, you don't know what God's doing. Many years later, you'll look back and you'll see some of the things that God did, and it'll make a lot more sense a few years down the road. But then there's just sometimes you just never understand. But you know what? That's okay. That's all right. That's all right. He had to abandon his reason. God says, God will show you. You see, what you don't know today, God will reveal to you tomorrow. God will show you. And if you aren't in the right place, how can God use you? Now, how was this conversation between Sarah and Abram? I can just imagine, if you've ever had like a hard conversation with your wife before, guys, and you know it's something that's going to disrupt, or might upset somebody, you got to kind of come in the back door and kind of lay little hints and say things like, hey, Sarah, hey, baby, I want to take you on a little vacation. Well, awesome. Thank you, honey. Where are you going to take me? Well, do you like surprises? Because I'm really not sure. How'd you learn about it? Well, God told me. Really? Urim, the moon god? No, like Jehovah God, like the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but we hadn't gotten that far yet. That God. Okay, well, great. So you're going to take me to a place you don't know where it is, and a God you hardly know spoke to you and told you about this. I can just imagine the enthusiasm. But she went anyway. And they took this step of faith, even though they had to leave their relationships and reason and so many other things. God's promises are the only thing in life that we can count on. Did you know that? The promises of God. You can always count on the promises of God. And when God says, I will show you, oh my goodness, he was going to show him. And it was going to blow Abram away once he got there. But here's another great thing to know too. Whenever God calls you away from something, God always calls you to something else. Sometimes we just think about what we left behind. God says, forget about what you left behind. I'm going to show you something. It's 10 times better. I'm going to call you to something, not just from something. And the blessings in the life of Abram from living by faith are far, far, far exceed the villa and the house and the comforts of God's about to blow him away. He is. I remember when we were thinking about what city we were going to start Edge Church in, I was talking with a pastor friend of mine, and he said, Ryan, I think that you need to go to another state. You need to go outside of where you're from. You need to go somewhere further away. And I felt like God was speaking to me through this pastor. I don't feel like that all the time, but in this moment, I definitely did. And he said, would you rather go east or west? And I was like, oh, I'd definitely go west. I was like, please, I don't want to go east. That sounds awful. And he said, okay. He said, well, get out a piece of paper and write down 10 cities you would consider going to and research it and call pastors and get on an airplane and travel out there and look around and just start moving on it. And I was like, really? I said, man, I don't have any money. And he said, Ryan, why don't you ask some of your friends to help you? He said, tell them God's put on your heart to plant a church in the Western United States and you need some help to buy some airline tickets and to travel to go figure this out. I was like, you can do that? My friend's real out of the box, He's like, well, yeah, Ryan, you can raise money for whatever you want to raise money for. And so crazy enough, I picked up the phone, I called a few people. Some people gave me some money. And I bought a plane ticket, and I went to San Diego, and I went here. I actually bought a plane ticket to Reno. Thank God he didn't call us there, I never actually went through I bought the ticket and then never went. But it was in that moment God began to direct us. God began to show us about the city of Denver and about the surrounding areas. And ultimately we felt the leadership of God to move to this part of town and to begin this church with limited financial resources. I had a little bit of money raised for a salary. And things got so lean at one point in time, I was selling workout videos out of my trunk, man, nights and weekends, trying to pay my house payment. I'm not kidding. And I'm a darn good salesperson, by the way, too. Like if the ministry doesn't work out, I know I could sell some videos, but that's another thing. But God was here, and the church grew, and it's fun to take a step of faith. It really is. It's challenging at the moment, but then God begins to bless us. You see, faith always blesses me. Always blesses me. You can't live by faith and not be blessed. Church, are you hearing what I'm telling you today? you live by faith, God will bless you. And 5 times in this passage, the Bible says, bless you. Look at this in verses 2 and 3. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous, and you will be a blessing to others, and I will bless those who bless you and curse those who treat you with contempt, and all the families of the earth will be blessed by you. What is God saying? I'm going to bless you. Abram, if you'll live by faith, if you'll go to a place that I'm going to show you, if you'll stop living by just mere reason and you will trust me, I will do something amazing in your life. I will bless you. And part of this blessing is echoed in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 1, verse 1, where the Bible says, this is a record of the ancestry of Jesus Christ, the Messiah, a descendant of David and Abraham. You see, Abraham is to be a forerunner, a forefather, if you will, of the Lord Jesus Christ. You see, all the nations will be blessed by him. Jesus Christ has blessed every nation, but his great something grandfather, Abram, was the man that lived by faith, that set this on course, that moved to the land of Canaan so he could become this great grandfather of Jesus Christ. He says, I will make you into a great nation. By the way, the Jewish people are still here today. Thousands of years later, very few people that are people groups in the Bible still exist. In fact, I think almost none of them do. But you know what? The Jewish people do. You know, God has had a plan for the nation of Israel and for Abraham for a long time. And it all goes back here to Genesis chapter 12, doesn't it? And then he says, you'll be a blessing to others. You see, when you begin to live by faith, God will bless you, but God will also bless the people around you. Do you know that? You take steps of faith, your family will be blessed. You begin to follow the Lord, your neighbors will be blessed. You begin to take bold steps of faith and obedience to God, God will use you to bless other people. And so God will bless you, but he will also bless others, which is so exciting. And I know there's some members here today of our launch team and some early folks that joined Edge Church, and you guys have worked hard. I'm talking like the people who got here early and stayed late and put out chairs and cleaned bathrooms and all that. But you know what? It's all been worth it. It's all been worth it because amazing life change has happened, and God has blessed other people because of your faith. Isn't that great to know today? God has blessed other people because of Gina and I's faith. God is blessing people in your life because of your faith. And let's be an inspiration. Let's be an encouragement to the people around us. And that's why we're receiving this I Love My Church offering this week and next weekend, which we're very excited about. We're asking our folks today to give above and beyond their normal gifts to help us with our facility here, because we're renting this building, and next year we're going to start working on the purchase of it. But this year we're renting the building. We are doing some upkeep on the facility and some other things like that. And so we're asking people to give above and beyond, because we want to have a place where life change happens, because it's all about the people. And buildings facilitate people. So we need to check this out. I want to share with you an inspirational video that is totally going to touch your heart today as we look at the last 5 years here at Edge Church. Let's check this out.
You know, my life was just a mess. I didn't feel like I had any direction. I just felt like, it was really empty. Nothing had, meaning.
It was kind of a dark place for me, especially, and bringing my family into that. A lot of drugs and arguing, and
so my life was kind of uneventful. It didn't have any meaning to it. It was empty.
I guess the best way to put it was a self-will run riot. I was addicted to heroin for 2+ years, and I struggled daily, and my routine was strictly to get and use and find ways and means to get more without the thought of who I was hurting.
I grew up Christian and went to high school and college still believing, and then met this guy. I made the conscious decision to not believe.
I had a lot of anger towards God for the loss of my husband. So that has been sitting deep inside for 6 years.
My life before Christ was very troublesome.
I was like this little tiny mouse in this little running ball, just in circles, going and going and going, not getting anywhere.
2010, my daughter passed away, and at that point, my God had turned into drugs, and I had become a heroin addict. And that was the only God that I believed in. It was the only God that felt like He could take away my pain, He could take away my suffering, He could only make me feel numb, and I could never understand why me, why this would happen to me, until God intervened into my life.
My darkest moment is when I realized that God was there for me the most. I finally, got down on my knees and surrendered my life to Jesus Christ, and I've searched my whole life to be around people where I thought that I could be myself, and this is one place I found it 100% in my heart, and that's why I keep coming back.
Our first day at the church, the first day in the building, and we came in and immediately felt extremely welcome and just got such a great feeling. And we go into the service, and as soon as the music starts, we just started bawling.
The Edge Church, when I first came in here, the first thing I saw was no perfect people allowed. And that hit home to me because no one would ever want a heroin addict into their home. And I was welcomed with welcoming arms.
Once we started attending, it was exactly where I wanted to be. And so our next step was for my son and I to be baptized as well and to accept Jesus Christ.
Really, my life has just done a complete 360 from what it used to be. My whole life changed that day when I first started accepting God. It was the most amazing feeling just because I just knew that nothing could hold me back and I just had to do it.
It was just Pastor Ryan talking to me through the whole sermon. I just felt like he was just talking right into my heart. And he gave the invitation, and I lost it. Tears streaming right there in the front row, my very first Sunday in a church I'd never been to before, and I could just feel God there with me. And I just knew that was what I'd been looking for, to fill that hole.
Now every weekend we get to come happily as a family, and it's just an amazing place to be every week. So 16 years we were together, and in the last, since January of this year, we broke up. It really just kind of was, I think, this one service that I was here, and I think the song Oceans came on, and I raised my hand to accept Christ, and I know for real this time this is definitely my choice and what defines me.
So what I love most about Edge Church is the people and how graceful and loving and trustful they all are.
When we got baptized, I was in the back and watching each of them do this, and I was feeling so overwhelmed with emotion, and then to actually get in that water and do this. And I'm not some little kid doing this, I'm an adult. To know that it took me this long to get to this point in my life. Pastor Ryan dunked me down, and all I could do was wrap my arms around his neck and say thank you.
You see the people come in the door, and you love on them, and you pray for them, and you wish the best for them, and then one day you see them get baptized, and even to say that just brings great joy.
love First Impressions because it shows me that every person is important. Every number means something to God, and it means something here at Edge Church. You get to be a part of something so wonderful here. Every number matters at Edge Church.
I'm Gator, and I'm number 712.
I'm Chandra, and I'm 693.
I'm Janelle, and I'm 498.
My name is Ashton.
My name is Nate.
I'm Taryn. My name is Noah.
I'm number 235.
My name's Taylor, and I'm number 718.
My name is Courtney.
My name is Nick.
My name is Christina.
My name is Eric, and I'm number 601.
My name is Terry.
My name is Tracy.
My name's Devin, and I'm number 522.